is your MP worth? Can't hear the shouting yet.
Well, I can.
A survey has revealed that the majority of people questioned felt members of Parliament deserved a 32% pay increase. Perhaps unsurprisingly, though, it was a survey of MPs. So do they have a point? An MP currently earns just over £65,000 a year. In an anonymous survey conducted by the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, our politicians said this ought to be increased to more than £86,000. That compares to the average UK salary of £26,500. While the chief executive of a medium-sized company earns £99,046. And over in Brussels, MEPs recently increased their pay to £80,387, amounting to about 38% of a European court judge's salary. Well, Jack Straw is still with us, as is Nick Herbert, and we're also joined by the Labour MP, John Mann. And before we get to it, Scotland viewers are with us too. Welcome to the Daily Politics. They've been watching First Minister's questions. First of all, Jack Straw, why do you think you're worth, or should be worth, more than 3 times the average salary in this country?
Well, it's not about me, by the way, because I've been paid twice as much as an MP for the last 15 years. So,
but as an MP?
And why do I think that MPs are worth a reasonable salary. This is about relativities in our society. We've got a situation where British MPs are not particularly well paid compared to other MPs. They're paid a lot less, if I may say so, than BBC political journalists. You may or may not want to say how much you're paid, Joe, but because you work for a public company paid for by the taxpayer. But one of the interesting things about this is that the journalists who are making comments about MPs' pay are on the whole much better paid than MPs.
So not just journalists making these comments. Tell me what a reasonable salary is. Just give me the reasonable salary you think.
I'll tell you why I'm not going to give you that, because we have now decided as a Parliament to hand this decision over to the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority. What I think is sensible is, rather than us going for an auction about all of this, to say we had years and years of struggling to set a proper pay level for MPs ourselves. It was unseemly. It led to the development of the expenses system, increases by the back door, which was completely unacceptable. Better to hand it over to IPSA and for them to decide. And meanwhile, I hope that we won't get people coming out with kind of hair shirt approaches. And as I say, just to repeat my point, this is not about, I'm not making a plea for myself. I enjoy a very high standard of living. My concern is about other people,
all right, but
younger MPs.
Let's have a look at who and what an MP salary should be compared to, what it's comparable to. I mean, is the work you do, John Mann, less important than that of a CEO of a medium-sized business?
It doesn't compare to anything else.
It does. There must be comparisons in terms of responsibility and status. MPs aren't that unique.
Why?
You will compare.
Why?
Does it not compare to a head teacher's salary?
We're representatives. We're representatives of the community of society. That's what we're meant to be, and therefore you can't do those comparators. So the issue is, are we paid enough at the moment? And £65,000 with the current recession, I say that we are.
Do you agree with that there isn't a comparison to be made with other responsible jobs like a head teacher of a secondary school who could get paid between £79,000 and £112,000 a year, or even a superintendent at £76,000 a year?
I think there are comparators to be made, and indeed it's a fundamental principle in the trade union movement, of which John is a part, as am I, that you do set salaries which are comparable. And you could, by the way, Joe also mentioned trade union general secretaries. John's trade union general secretaries would be paid 6-figure salary. So these things are out there. My concern is this. The intake in 2010 of new MPs, I thought, was actually a higher level of intellect and talent on both sides than any I've seen in the last...
It's widely thought to have been a
so
very
the salary
good
hasn't
intake.
put off.
So it hasn't put off those people, but my concern is to ensure that it doesn't put off people in the future.
You should be very concerned about that, John Mann, the sort of people that you perhaps would like to see come into Parliament. Well, they're not necessarily going to be city bankers, doctors and barristers. If you want to encourage somebody who's come from a working-class background and earns a sort of mediocre salary, they're not going to come into the House of Commons.
Because Jack's argument is very ironic, because when he came in, it was a very low salary, and on that presumption, his intake must have been particularly poor. It's a total nonsense to suggest that MPs come in for the pay, and that what we need to do is attract greater people. It's for the electorate to decide. There's no shortage of competition In fact, the problem in Parliament is we don't have enough people from enough walks of life. We don't have enough people in ordinary professions.
But that's what I say. And why not, Jack?
That makes my point. And I say, although the talent level was higher, what's also happened is that parliamentary intake has become much more homogenous. 90% graduates, a lot of people on both sides being subsidised either by their spouses or by family income, and I don't think that is sensible. So that's why I say, let's try and take the emotion out of this and leave it to the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, which is, for the first time ever, we've said we're not going to set our own pay. I know this is a really, really tricky issue, for sure. There's never a good time for it to be discussed. But I think for the health of our democracy, I mean, just as, and I say again because this is a really important issue, journalists are paid, the journalists who monitor us are paid considerably more than MPs. Now, that's a decision being made by the BBC.
Not all journalists, Jack.
Not all journalists, but certainly the ones who monitor us.
And so what?
That's a decision. Well, it's about comparability and it's about the attractiveness of people's careers.
All right, Neil, what's your view on this? Should MPs be paid more?
No, I mean, I just think at the moment...
But what about this issue about attracting people from all walks of life? John Mann wants it, but doesn't accept the argument that actually if you don't pay a reasonable salary, all those smart people are just going to go into other industries.
I think that might be a wider issue about politics and the nature of the job, and I think it's a bigger question, actually, about the sort of things that an MP now does. But I think just at the moment, when we have the downturn, where we have pay freezes in the public sector, where we've had pay freezes effectively in large parts of the private sector for some time, real incomes, as Andrew
This is historical, isn't it?
Yes, but to be talking about a substantial pay increase now could not be a worse time to be doing so. And it is still in the close wake. Maybe this is something that could be looked at a different moment, but not now. And we've just had the expenses scandal. We have not properly recovered from that. There is still an issue of confidence in members of Parliament and the integrity of members of Parliament. And so to raise this issue now is, I think, extremely damaging. We have to look at the wider economy and what people are going through at the moment. They're not just having pay freezes, they're having real falls in their income.
Look, I understand that entirely. What IPSA is doing is not saying, let's make a decision about what we do tomorrow. They're looking at least until, but not before the next Parliament. But at some stage, this issue, I think, does need to be determined. You, as much as anybody else in the House of Commons, and John, as well as all the other MPs, agreed that the decision about MPs' pay should be taken out of the hands of MPs and passed over to the authority.
John Mann, that you're out of step with most of your parliamentary colleagues.
I think I probably am, but find me the...
Never stopped him before.
Find me the industrial worker or the care assistant
What
who's
about the
saying
the General Secretary of the Union that Jack Straw pointed out?
There's millions of industrial workers. There's loads of care assistants, people like that. None of them are saying to me, "Oh, we'd become an MP if you paid us more than 65,000." That isn't the problem.
Should a General Secretary of the Union be paid a six-figure salary?
If it was my union, I'd get it reduced.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John Mann. I got a clear answer there.
I think his union General Secretary is a worried man. Jack, thanks as well. Good to see you again. Come back and see us, both of you.